My father, Michael, stood by the mahogany fireplace, holding two pieces of paper. In his left hand was my acceptance letter to the architecture program I had spent 4 years working toward. In his right was the pregnancy test he had found in the bathroom bin. He didn't scream. He didn't look at me with disappointment. He looked at me like I was a cracked foundation that needed to be condemned. Without a word, he dropped the acceptance letter into the fire. I watched the edges curl and turn to ash. "You are a structural liability to this family, Samantha," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You have 10 minutes to vacate the premises. I will not have you contaminate your sister's debutante ball." He checked his watch. 9 minutes and 50 seconds. Before we see how they pay for this, drop a comment. Where are you listening from right now, and what time is it for you? I love seeing how global our community has become. 9 minutes is a long time when you aren't packing a life, but escaping a set. I didn't run to my room. I walked. I kept my breathing even, my pulse steady. Panic is a luxury for people who have a safety net, and my father had just set mine on fire. I entered my bedroom, a space decorated in pastels I hated, chosen by my mother to match the curtains. I bypassed the closet full of silk gowns and debutante dresses. Those belonged to the daughter they wanted to display, not the woman they were discarding. I grabbed a worn canvas duffel bag from under the bed. Into it went the essentials: 2 pairs of jeans, 3 oversized sweaters to hide what was coming, my laptop, and a small envelope of cash I'd saved from tutoring. I didn't take the pearl necklace my grandmother left me. I didn't take the photo albums. I didn't take anything that carried their fingerprint. But there was one thing I couldn't leave behind. I reached into the back of my closet, behind the rows of pristine shoeboxes, and pulled out a black plastic mailing tube. Inside were 3 years of hand-drawn schematics, sketches of buildings that defied gravity, designs for eco-friendly structures I dreamed of building one day. That tube held my soul. It was the only thing in this house that was actually mine. I zipped the bag. 4 minutes left. Walking down the grand staircase felt like descending from a stage after the final curtain. My mother, Elizabeth, was standing in the foyer. She was weeping. A soft, pathetic sound that used to break my heart, but now just sounded like static. She was folding a linen napkin over and over in her trembling hands. I stopped on the bottom step. I waited. I gave her 1 second, 1 heartbeat to be a mother, to look at me, to step between her husband and her pregnant daughter. She didn't. She turned her back to me, pretending to adjust the vase of white lies on the entry table. She chose the flowers. She chose the piece of her golden cage over the messiness of protecting me. That was my closure. I didn't say goodbye. You don't say goodbye to people who are already ghosts. I walked past her, the scent of her expensive lavender perfume making me nauseous. The heavy oak front door loomed ahead, a barrier meant to intimidate guests and keep secrets inside. I pulled it open. The night air was freezing, carrying the sharp scent of rain on asphalt. I stepped out and pulled the door shut behind me. The latch clicked, a heavy, solid thud. It didn't sound like a door closing. It sounded like a vault ceiling. The rain hit me instantly, soaking through my thin sweater, but I didn't shiver. I walked down the long, manicured driveway, gravel crunching under my boots. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my sister, probably asking if I was really leaving, or maybe worrying about how this would look for her party. I didn't check it. I pulled the phone out. The screen glowed in the darkness. I opened my contacts. Father, block contact. Mother, block contact. Sister, block contact. I didn't feel lonely. I felt light. The weight of their expectations, their conditional love, their obsession with appearance. It was all back behind that oak door. I was 18 years old, I was pregnant, I had $300 and nowhere to sleep. But as I reached the iron gates at the end of the driveway, I smiled, because for the first time in my life, the only structural problems I had to solve were my own. The first 3 years weren't a life, they were a shift. My new address wasn't a townhouse or a dorm room, it was a rusted single-wide trailer parked on the edge of an active construction site in East Newark. The rent was cheap because the vibrations from the pile drivers rattled the dishes off the shelves every morning at 6. I didn't have a nursery, I had a file room. When Andrew was born, I lined a heavy-duty cardboard box with acoustic foam and blankets, tucking him under my desk while I answered phones for a mid-level building firm. I became invisible. To the architects walking past with their rolled-up schematics and expensive coffees, I was just the girl who filed invoices and made sure the printer had toner. They didn't know that while they were at happy hour, I was still there. When the office emptied out at 7, I didn't go home. I pulled out my textbooks and the company's discarded blueprints. I studied structural engineering by the light of the emergency exit sign, nursing Andrew with one arm and calculating load-bearing ratios with the other. People like to call this resilience, but that's too soft a word. I called it shadow work. You see, when you're raised in a house built on appearances, you're taught to hide your flaws in the dark. But out here in the cold reality of survival, I learned that the dark is where the real building happens. I stopped, trying to be the perfect daughter. I took all the shame, the anger, and the liability my father said I was, and I poured it into concrete and steel. I realized that if I could survive the silence of my own family, I could survive the noise of this world. I didn't look for the light at the end of the tunnel. I learned how to build the tunnel myself. The turning point didn't come with a lottery ticket. It came with a red pen. One rainy Tuesday, Mr. Sterling, the firm's owner, a man who spoke in grunts and smelled like drywall dust, stormed out of his office. He slammed a set of blueprints onto the reception desk. The lead architect had missed a critical stress fracture in the foundation design for a high-rise. It was a mistake that would have cost millions, maybe lives. But the mistake was circled in red ink. Next to it, in neat, precise block letters, was a calculation correcting the error and a note. Increase rebar density by 15%, or the shear wall fails. Who touched these? Sterling barked, looking at the junior associates. They all shook their heads. I didn't stand up. Apologies are for errors, and I hadn't made one. My eyes met his over the top of my computer monitor. I did, I said. The math was wrong. I fixed it. The room went silent, the kind of silence that usually precedes a firing. Sterling stared at me. He looked at the baby sleeping in the box under my desk. He looked at the textbooks stacked behind the printer. Then he looked back at the blueprints. "You're the receptionist," he said. "I'm an architect," I corrected, my voice flat and final. "I just haven't been paid like one yet." Sterling didn't smile. He didn't offer pity. He nodded once. "Grab your box, kid. You're moving to the drafting table. Don't make me regret it." That was the only permission I needed. I didn't just work hard. I worked with the terrifying focus of someone who knows exactly what it costs to be thrown away. By the time Andrew was walking, I wasn't just fixing other people's mistakes. I was designing the skyline. 15 years is a long time in a human life, but in architecture, it's just the time it takes to go from a foundation to a skyline. I wasn't waking up in a trailer anymore. I woke up to the sound of automated blinds rising, revealing a panoramic view of the city I had helped reshape. My bed sheets were Egyptian cotton thread counts higher than my parents' credit scores. The silence in my house wasn't the silence of abandonment. It was the expensive, curated silence of security. I walked into the kitchen, a sleek expanse of marble and matte black steel. Andrew was already there, sitting at the island. He was 15 now. He didn't look like a mistake. He looked like the future. He was wearing noise-canceling headphones, typing furiously on a custom-built laptop surrounded by 3 monitors displaying lines of code that looked like a foreign language to anyone over 40. He looked up and smiled, a real, easy smile, the kind of smile that only exists on the face of a child who has never had to wonder if he was wanted. "Morning," he said, sliding a mug of black coffee across the counter. "Stock market's down, but your portfolio is up. I rebalanced the algorithm while you were sleeping." "Thanks," I said, taking a sip. "Don't forget you have a history exam today." "Already aced it," he grinned. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. It wasn't a text vibration. It was the specific sharp chime I had assigned to a priority email. I glanced at the screen. The sender ID made the room feel 10 degrees colder. From Elizabeth Van Ton. Subject, arrival. I didn't flinch. Emotions are bad data, and I had learned to delete them. I swiped the message open with the same detachment I used to review contractor invoices. "Samantha, your father and I are in the city for the week. We have business matters to attend to, and we expect to see you. We will come to your address on Thursday at 2. Do not make this difficult. We are willing to listen to whatever explanation you have for the last decade." Mother, I stared at the words. We expect to see you, willing to listen. Even after 15 years of silence, the audacity remained perfectly intact. They didn't assume I was successful. They assumed I was still the 19-year-old girl shivering in the rain. Desperate for their forgiveness, they thought they were granting me an audience. They had no idea they were walking into an inspection. Andrew pulled one earphone off. He had seen the notification on the synced home server. His eyes narrowed. "Is that them?" he asked. His voice wasn't scared, it was protective. "Do you want me to crash their GPS? I can route them to the sanitation plant, or I can just auto-delete the email and block the domain." I looked at my son. He was ready to go to war for me with a keyboard. I reached out and squeezed his hand. "No," I said softly. "Why?" he asked. "They don't deserve your time." "Because, Andrew," I said, hitting Mark as read, but not replying. "You don't block a demolition crew when you've built a fortress. You let them come. You let them see that the structure they try to condemn is the only one left standing." I took another sip of coffee. Let them come. It's time for the audit. The house I built isn't just a place to sleep. It's a statement. Located on the edge of the Palisades, it's a cantilevered structure of steel and eco-glass that hangs over the cliffside like a held breath. It has no curtains. It has no dark corners. It is transparent, unapologetic, and it terrifies people who have things to hide. That was the point. I didn't spend the morning scrubbing floors or baking cinnamon rolls to simulate a warmth that never existed between us. I treated the space like a gallery. I aligned the art. I adjusted the lighting to a cool, clinical white. I wasn't preparing a home for family. I was staging a set for a hostile takeover. I went to my dressing room. I bypassed the soft florals and comfortable knits. I chose armor. A black cashmere turtleneck, tailored trousers that cost more than my father's first car, and a necklace made of brushed geometric steel. My hair was pulled back tight. No loose strands, no softness. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the 18-year-old girl who cried in the rain. I saw the head of operations for Sterling and Partners. I saw the woman who fired incompetent contractors without blinking. Andrew came down the floating staircase. He had swapped his hoodie for a crisp navy button-down and chinos. He didn't look like a teenager being forced to dress up. He looked like a junior executive. "How do I look?" he asked, adjusting his watch. "Expensive," I said, "and impenetrable." I walked over to I, could no longer feed their ego. Now they were back, not because they missed me, but because they were starving. They were looking at my life and seeing a buffet. "You want a loan?" I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. "We want an introduction," Michael said, leaning forward. "To your boss, Mr. Sterling. If you vouch for us, maybe put up your salary as a guarantee, we could work something out." I looked at Andrew. He hadn't moved, but his eyes were locked on mine. He saw them for what they were. "You want me to risk my position to secure a loan for you?" I said. "It's not a risk, Samantha," Michael scoffed. "We're family. And besides," he looked around the room again, his eyes hungry. "If you can get us a meeting with the man who owns this, our problems are solved." I slowly crossed my legs. The trap was set. They had walked right into the center of the blueprint, and they didn't even know I was holding the pen. "You want to meet the owner?" I said. "Okay." Andrew chose that exact moment to walk back into the living room. He didn't stomp or slouch. He moved with a quiet confidence of someone who understands his own value, a trait I had spent 15 years cultivating in him because I knew the world would try to strip it away. He held his tablet loosely at his side. Michael looked at him, his lip curling in that familiar sneering reflex. "So," my father said, addressing Andrew for the first time, "I assume you're looking for handouts too? Or did your father, whoever he was, teach you how to work for a living? It was a low blow designed to shame me by insulting my son." But Michael was using outdated ammunition. He thought he was shooting at a fatherless child. He didn't realize he was firing at a fortress. Andrew didn't flinch. He didn't look at me for permission. He simply tapped his screen and turned the tablet around to face his grandfather. "My father is doing fine," Andrew said, his voice bored. "He actually just texted me. His company, Nebular Systems, went public on the NASDAQ this morning. Opening bell, Michael froze. The name of the tech unicorn was on every financial news channel in the country. He's not a whoever." Andrew continued swiping to a graph showing a vertical green line. "He's the majority shareholder. He sends me a trust fund dividend every quarter that earns more interest than your entire portfolio. I don't need your handouts, Michael. I could buy your car right now with the cash in my checking account." The silence in the room was absolute. My mother's mouth opened slightly, her eyes darting between Andrew and the screen. The narrative they had built for 15 years that I was a ruined woman raising a bastard child in poverty shattered instantly. But then I saw the shift. I saw the greed override the shame. Michael didn't apologize. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked calculating. He realized that the liability grandson was actually an asset. He cleared his throat, pivoting instantly. "Well, that's fortunate. Good connections are important." He turned his back on Andrew, dismissing him again, and focused his predatory gaze back on me. "But that's the boys' money. We're talking about business, Samantha." "About the loan?" He gestured around the glass walls of the villa. "You said you could get us a meeting with the owner, Mr. Sterling, was it?" "If you work for him, you can get him in the room. Tell him we're family. Tell him we're good for the money." He still didn't get it. He was so blinded by his own arrogance that he couldn't see the truth even when he was sitting on it. He thought I was the gatekeeper. He thought I was the secretary. "I can't get Mr. Sterling," I said, standing up slowly. "Why not?" Michael snapped, his patience fraying. Don't be difficult, Samantha. Go get your boss. I can't get him, I repeated, walking toward the display case on the far wall, because Mr. Sterling doesn't own this house. I unlocked the glass cabinet. Inside, resting on a velvet stand, was the black plastic mailing tube I had carried out into the rain 15 years ago. It was scratched and faded, but it was the most valuable thing in the room. I pulled the cap off. The sound was a sharp pop in the quiet room. I walked back to the coffee table and unrolled the yellowed, crinkled papers right over the top of Michael's leather portfolio. They were hand-drawn sketches, rough, frantic, but unmistakable. The cantilevered living room, the glass walls, the structural supports drilled into the cliffside. "Look at the bottom corner," I said softly. Michael looked down. Elizabeth leaned in. Designed by Samantha Vanton. Date, October 14th, 2008. I drew this the night I slept in a bus station, I said. I refined it in a trailer while my son slept in a cardboard box. And 5 years ago, I bought this land, and I built it. I leaned in, placing my hands flat on the table, looming over them. I am the architect, I said, my voice cold and absolute. And I am the owner. There is no Mr. Sterling coming to save you. There is only me. Michael's face went pale, draining of color as the reality hit him like a wrecking ball. He looked at the house, really looked at it, and realized he wasn't sitting in a stranger's wealth. He was sitting in his daughter's victory. "You," he whispered. "You own this?" "I own it all," I said. "The firm, the house, the land, and my decision regarding your loan is final." I straightened up and looked him dead in the eye. Application denied. The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by the hum of the server rack in the corner. Michael slumped back into the Italian leather sofa. The arrogance finally drained out of him. Elizabeth looked at the blueprints, then at me, her eyes filling with tears that might have actually been real this time. "Samantha," she whispered. We didn't know. We're so proud of you." "Don't," I said. The word was soft, but sharp enough to cut. "Don't try to rewrite history just because you like the ending." I walked to the front door and held it open. The wind from the cliffside rushed in, cold and clean. They stood up slowly, looking older and smaller than they had when they arrived. They walked toward me, pausing at the threshold, waiting for a hug or a promise or a check. "Will we see you again?" Michael asked, his voice cracking. "We're family, Samantha. Doesn't that count for anything?" I looked at them, really looked at them, and felt a profound sense of peace. The anger was gone. The need for their approval was gone. "I forgave you a long time ago," I said. "I forgave you because I refused to carry the poison you fed me. But you need to understand something. Forgiveness is a release of resentment. It is not a renewal of access." I looked back at Andrew, who was watching me from the kitchen, safe and loved. "My table is full," I said. "There are no empty chairs for people who only love you when you're winning." I stepped back. "Goodbye." I closed the heavy steel door. The latch clicked a solid, final sound. I didn't watch them drive away. I turned around. Andrew was smiling. The house was warm. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was complete. If you've ever had to close the door to protect your peace, share this story and tell me in the comments. Is success the best revenge? Or is silence even better? I'll be reading your thoughts.